Hi everyone. Today I'll be demonstrating how to install our HES3D-120 concealed hinge with the use of our new routing template. First step for installing a concealed hinge is to make a mark on the edge of your door. For this purpose, I'm going to go 15 inches on center down from the top edge of the door, so I'm going to make a small mark and simply transfer that over with a square. A great feature about this template is how easy it is to position to get prepared for your routing. There's no need to adjust any kind of dial or any kind of setting in a depth sort of sense on the door. Really all you need to do is make sure that these two metal tabs on the top and bottom of the template register on the front face of the door. So really all you need to do is just be sure that it is flushed up to this front face of the door. So you don't want one plate in front of the other or sitting on top of the door. You really want to make sure that it's sitting nice and flat like this. With these metal tabs on the end, these are really registering tools. This takes some of the thinking out of play when it comes to placing the template on the edge of the door. Really, you just want to make sure that you lay the template flat, approaching from the front face of the door, and just push until you feel both sides register on the door's face. Another neat feature about these templates is they all have a center line etched into them. So this allows you to pretty easily line up the center of your mortise or the center of your template right on the line you marked earlier. So you make sure your door to jamb install transfers easily. So to actually lock the template in place, all it takes is a couple of hammer hits with around the nail set here. Make sure there's a nice and secure without overdoing it. Now our template is firmly placed. One trick I like to do is to take a spade bit or a Forstner bit that's slightly larger in diameter sense, slightly larger than the router bit you intend to use. So in this case, we have a 1/2 inch diameter router bit. I'm going to use a 5/8 inch spade bit. The purpose of this is to give my router bit an entry point. So when I drop the router bit or base down on here, the bit has an entry point and can start the process. It also helps to remove some material and make the routing a little bit easier. And this does not need to be excessively deep. I'm going to start with about a 1/2 inch depth here. Again, that's just an entry point for the router bit. One other thing to verify with these templates in our HES3D hinges is whether or not the door and the frame side are equal widths. In this case, they are not. Our door side is 2 millimeters narrower than the frame side. Thus, you do need a different mortise when it comes to installing the hinge. So since I'm working on the door's edge, I want to make sure that these two plates here, these two green metal plates, have the word door facing me. That makes me feel confident that when I cut this, it's going to have the right dimension so the door half of the hinge fits in there snugly. When it comes to setting the depth of your router bit for this installation, you want to check the spec listed on the install print. Since this hinge has a shallower cut and then a deeper cut, it's a bit of a two-stepped cut, as you can see here by this side view profile. With that in mind, our first cut, it needs to be 6.5 millimeters deep. And then the full depth of the mortise is going to be 21 millimeters deep. However, you do need to factor in the thickness of the template itself, which in this case is 18 millimeters. So you need to factor in the 18 millimeter thickness of the template as well as the depth you need to cut into the wood. So with our first cut being 6.5 millimeters deep, that'd be this upper portion here, the full length shallow part. 6.5 millimeters is the depth we need, plus 18 millimeters of the template thickness. So we need to cut 24.5. So I've already set my square. This is a metric double square. I've set this to 24.5 millimeters. That's going to help me adjust the depth of my router to make sure I'm cutting the right depth. So really once you line up your ruler's edge against the base and make sure that the router bit is flush against the edge, then you can lock that in. And just go ahead and verify that nothing moves. So once we've verified that, now I can go ahead and begin the routing. One last step before we actually start cutting is to make sure you're wearing safety glasses. Routers are very messy, so glasses are a must. So again, since we've created this entry point, it really is critical that the bit finds this hole when we're starting. It should lay flat like this. You know, if your router is leaning kind of cockeyed like that, it has not found the entry hole. So now I'm ready to turn the router on and begin to cut. And I'm going to be working in a clockwise motion, slowly going around the perimeter. All right, so we finished our first pass. However, I did notice a lot of sawdust started to build up during the cut. So it is helpful to go ahead and vacuum that out. Now, without adjusting any settings, I'm going to go ahead and do that pass again just to make sure the outer perimeter is nice and squared up to lead to a nice fit when we install the hinge. So again, nice, easy, light pass, just cleaning up the outside. And it is a good safety tip to always let your router come to a full stop before you remove it from the cut. Otherwise, you may risk personal injury, damage to the template, or your door. All right, so that would be our first 6.5 millimeter deep cut. Again, with this being kind of a two-stage cutout here, we've completed this full-length shallow cut. And we're going to go ahead and move on, adjust our template to prepare for the deeper, narrower portion of the hinge. So in order to get ready for the deeper cut, really, there's only one thing you need to do. Simply loosen these flathead screws here on these green plates to the left and right ends of the template. Go ahead and take the screw all the way out. And we'll slide both of these tabs in. There's actually a secondary hole that will automatically line up when you've pushed them all the way in, as such. So then you'll go ahead and tighten your screws back into these holes. And just snugging them up is okay for this application. There's no need to tighten these as hard as you can. Okay, one thing I'm going to do before we start actually routing in the deeper pocket is I'm going to extend my access hole a little bit deeper into the edge of the door with that same spade bit. And again, that's just giving our router bit a place to get started. Go ahead and take a quick measurement. All right, so it's essentially the same process as before. Make sure the bit is started flat in that access hole. And with a firm grip, turn the router on and do a clockwise lap. Again, let the bit come to a full rest. Quick vacuum. So the total depth that the secondary cut needs to be is 21 millimeters. That 21 plus the 18 millimeter stack up of the template thickness gives us 39 millimeters. So in the second cut, I'm really working down just a 1/4 inch at a time until I can make a very light pass to end up at the final depth of 21 millimeters. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a couple more laps until we get to that final depth. Now that the majority of our material has been removed, I'm going to go ahead and make my final measurement as far as the depth goes with the bit and make a light final pass and finish this install. Since the final depth of the hinge is 21 millimeters, 18 millimeter thickness of the template, I'm going to go ahead and set my square to 39 millimeters. Again, just adjusting my router until I've got that just right. So right about there. We could lock it at this setting. Just go ahead and verify nothing moved too much. Looks great. And then this will be our final pass. On the final pass, I like to go around 2 laps around the perimeter nice and slow. Again, this is the last cut, so just making sure that the edges are nice and clean. So when you fit the hinge in there, it's an airtight fit. Give it one last vacuum here. All right, now that we've finished our routing, it's a pretty easy process to remove the template from the edge of the door. All you need is a pretty standard hammer. You're going to use the claw side, the nail removal side, and pretty simply just hook this on here and pry it up. Doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. I would be somewhat careful with these if you want it. Now, as you can see, very easy to uninstall, and we're left with a very nice cutout. Now that our template's removed, we'll go ahead and check our fit with the HES3D-120. And again, since this hinge does have a door side and a frame side with different measurements, you just want to verify that you're installing the correct half. Since we're working on the door, I'm going to go ahead and place the door half of the hinge into the mortise. As you can see, it's a perfect fit. And this little space here will allow for our cover caps to fit. First, I'm going to go ahead and drill 2 pilot holes here for the mounting screws. Now we can take the provided flathead wood screws and go ahead and drive this hinge in. Now that our 2 screws are installed, we'll go ahead and take our 2 cover caps, install these on both sides. And as you can see, we have a perfect flush install with no gaps on any of the edges. As you can see, these Dempo templates are very easy to use, making installation convenient and easy, saving you time and money. You can find these templates exclusively at sugatsune.com.